Thanks, Mr. Chairman. And I want to thank all the witnesses. I don't know when I've listened to a whole panel of witnesses and agreed with every one of you. I appreciate the background experience you bring to this and the comments. First, I think, Mr. Tabb, your comment about put the grandparents in charge, that really hits home. For some reason, the reproduction part is out of our control, and we realize how precious these kids are, especially when they're grandchildren, and not to diminish being a parent, and I'm both. I appreciate your comments also, Mrs. Chin, and I wanted to say to you that your oral testimony was even better than your written testimony, and I would suggest the congressional record of your testimony would be very useful to put in a farm magazine. And I'd like to see that read in the urban areas if there's a way that we can advocate that through FFA or anywhere else, because that picks up the flavor of this and the sense of what the way of life is like. And I also, the comments about the inspector doesn't know to get out of the way, but the kids do. Yes, that's simple common sense. It transcends species. And if you've ever tried to herd confinement hogs on dirt, you know that. If you have ever taken a kennel-raised field trial champion bird dog out to the actual field and realized that that dog doesn't know how to get across the creek or through the fence, kids are the same way. If they grow up on the farm, they learn these things incrementally. The best safety you can have is you watch those kids and you see what they know, you know where their weaknesses are, you know where the dangers are, and you're constantly there to make sure they avoid the dangers, including none of our little kids got near the limited fed sows during gestation. That would be the most dangerous thing I can actually think of, and horrifying included. The statement that you testified, Mr. Tabb, on, and I've just looked it up here because the language struck home with me, where the temperatures at which they are working exceed or drop below a certain temperature, factoring in such things as humidity, wind velocity, and the degree and duration of the physical exertion required by the work, in direct sun be limited, the temperature reaches certain thresholds for prolonged periods of time. I just have to tell you that Marilyn and I have raised 3 sons, and they are grown now in their 30s. The oldest one sat down with me a couple of years ago, and he said, "Dad, do you remember when you had us out working when it was 126 degrees heat index?" I said, "Yeah, I do, actually. That was an unusual day, but we had the form set, and we had to pour concrete, and we made money." He said, "That's what you said, Dad. You said we made money. But do you remember 2 days in a row where we were out driving sheet piling across the swamp when it was 60 below wind chill?" I said, "Yeah, I do remember that, too, because we didn't have to mat the drag line, and we made money." He said, "That's what you said, Dad. But what I wanted to tell you is that that's 186 degrees temperature range between 60 below and 126 above, and no species other than your sons would survive such an ordeal." But all 3 of those sons, they are grown up, and they all work. They enjoy work, and work is an honorable thing. And the life that we have in rural America is among the most honorable that we have. And when it's threatened, I'm concerned about it, and it comes to me in a lot the same way it does Danny Rehberg and many others that have had the benefits of living in this way. I just think that it's a mistake for us to even think about lowering I guess they would say raising the standards. I say lowering the standards for youth to work, because the work ethic and the way of life is so valuable, and our trust that we should have in the people that are the parents, the grandparents, the neighbors, the relation, and the mentors for these children should be adequate. I trust them, and I trust the parents to make the judgment as to who they will trust their children's safety to. And I would pose this question: should we, instead of adding regulation to agriculture, should we instead lift some of the regulations for non-farm work for our youth so that they could learn a work ethic in the neighboring business? And should we allow parents to sign a waiver so that they could allow their children to go to work in a neighboring business to somebody that they trust, rather than having more regulation tighten this down and eventually choke off our work ethic? Would it be better to allow that opportunity for many other children aside, in addition to agriculture? And I start with Ms. Chin.
I think that would be a great idea. Our local newspaper owner in our town would love to be training young kids to just stuff papers, but he can't because of the labor rules. He cannot hire a 13-year-old kid to come in and stuff inserts into his newspaper. But what a great thing for a child to learn, the value of hard work, that when I work hard at something, I'm going to get paid for it. And then I can have that pride of ownership in that newspaper when it gets delivered into mom and dad's mailbox the next day. These are things that our kids are not being allowed to do today. They're not learning this at a young age, but they all know how to play a video game real good. But how's that benefit everybody in life? What these kids learn in a job, they're going to take with them as they grow older. And we're going to have a great workforce, and we're going to have kids that know responsibility and the value of hard work, and that it doesn't matter how big that obstacle is. If you set your mind to it, you can achieve anything. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Shesky?
Agriculture education is one of the few career and technical education programs that allow students to really get involved and engage as early as middle school and junior high. In fact, most of the career and technical education programs, meaning outside of agriculture, are really only limited to students in their junior and senior year in high school. And the advantage is that it's much easier under current regulations to make sure those students have that experiential learning. In fact, I would say that a lot of those, the part of the whole career technical education model that they struggle with the most is providing students the relevant experiential learning by doing. Often they're creating that within the classroom. But in our case, you know, the farm, as it was alluded to by Mr. Tabb and others, is an opportunity to extend that learning environment out into the community and kids to get real-life learning experiences and actually save money that helps them go on to college or do other things that helps advance their career. And I think that's another part of this whole financial literacy piece that, back to your comment about one of the inherent advantages young people in rural America have, is that because they have the opportunity to work in those situations, earn money, they become a lot probably more financially literate and responsible with that funds than do their counterparts who have never had that experience.
Thank you. Mr. Tabb?
Absolutely. You know, urban youth should be afforded the same opportunities that rural youth have. And since we don't have many urban farms, a little bit of container growing here and there. But, you know, growing up on a farm and working, I had 5 siblings. There were 6 of us kids. And one Sunday morning, a lady came up to my dad and says, Mr. Tabb, says, your children are so well behaved in church, I'd like my son to sit with you one Sunday. And he said, well, that's fine. And he said, I'd like to have him by Friday, but Saturday morning at the very latest. We didn't have time to get in trouble. But you know, we were taught that work ethic at a young age. In fact, that's something, if you want to do something mandatory, put a work ethics requirement in anybody to graduate from high school. That would, I think you would find that would be a real good part to a well-rounded education. But allowing young people, whether they're in the country or in the urban area, to actually be able to learn something, learn a trade, learn how to change oil in a vehicle, or how to properly measure something before you know, you would put it together. Because I've been a tremendous proponent of vocational education. And you know, a lot of kids that are at risk can't see a reason to stay in school. If they can see practical application, they'll stay in school. If they can learn how to read calipers, to be an auto mechanic, or to figure how many cubic yards of concrete it's going to take for that footer or foundation, it's amazing how you can keep these kids involved. But if you got to make them wait until they're beyond that threshold to have that curiosity to want to learn, you're starting to lose a lot of them.
Thank you. Mr. Ebert?
Yeah, I think we need to back off on some of those regulations because I think kids today have so much opportunity to get involved in work-related activities and opportunities. Why don't we want to stifle them? Let them start early. They're going to grow so much more and make America greater than what it is now by giving them that opportunity.
Thank you. And just briefly in closing, to support a statement that I just added up the times that we've been to the emergency room. We have had 2 knee surgeries and a broken femur, and none of them had to do with any of the work that those young men did. It all had to do with sports or recreational. Thank you very much, all of you witnesses, and I appreciate especially the statements made in conclusion here, and I yield back to the chairman. Thank you.